Welcome to episode 3 of Around the Tavern. Today, the guys talk about the media around D&D, from the 1983 cartoon TV show to all of the movies. Make sure you don't miss the post-show interview for characters that should have been. Without further ado...
Welcome to Around the Tavern with Chris and Steven. I am your co-host, Steven, and this is the host...
Chris, that's me. Hey, Steven. We did that a little bit backwards today.
Oh, yeah. This is a podcast that covers the content from across Dungeon and Dragons Multiverse from right here in our cozy tavern. Today's topic is TV shows and movies. We take a trip through the cinematic and televised life of Dungeons and Dragons. It
TV
is
shows and movies, Steven.
It is spotty and of dubious quality, I will say.
Dubious quality. I don't know. It's hit or miss with a lot of misses, in my opinion. All right. So basically, we're going to start with the TV show. And if you didn't know, Dungeons and Dragons had a TV show that came out in 1983. And it was a cartoon series that had 3 full seasons. Steven, I know you were able to finish the show. I, however, did not. I got like 7 episodes in and I was like, okay, I'm good. I get the gist. I don't think I can make myself finish watching this. So what is your verdict on the TV show?
The TV show, it was definitely a product of its time. If you think of it on the same level as you think of all of the other non-Disney cartoons of the time period, I think He-Man's is probably a little bit early, but if you think of it like Thundercats and stuff like that, it holds up to that caliber. I'm going to say it fails in a few points. Number one being the sound design, which is doo-doo garbage.
Doo-doo garbage. That's it. You heard it here first from Steven.
Most of the voice
garbage.
Actors do a pretty good job. Actually, fun fact, the main antagonist, or the voice of the main antagonist, is voiced by the same guy who did Optimus Prime in the original Transformers series.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, that's a fun little thing you might pick up on as you listen to the show. I mean, in the first episode, there's a unicorn character called Uni, and she makes the most annoying little bleeding. Imagine that every single time. There's in the first season,
accurate.
There's episode 4 is an episode dedicated to really fleshing out Uni's character, so you're going to get really familiar with that.
Oh, that's the one where Uni gets kidnapped, right? And little Bobby is like, "Hey, we have to save the unicorn," and the rest of the party is like, "Forget the unicorn," right?
Yeah, Uni getting kidnapped you think would be a blessing, but no, you hear more of Uni than you do in any other episode.
So let's actually explain what the show's about first. 6 kids enter the Dungeons and Dragons ride at a local amusement park, and then are transported into the world of swords and sorceries, where with the help of their dungeon master and Uni the unicorn, they try to find their way back home. So it's like literal kids go on this amusement park ride, and like the second they enter the ride, they go through this magical portal and they're thrown into this world. They're given classes and they make up a D&D party.
But I would say that description is a lie, because the dungeon master never helps them, and Uni is nothing but a hindrance and annoyance.
And I think that there's a character that constantly points out how useless and annoying the dungeon master is.
Yeah, so one of the only characters' names that I can remember, Eric, he's this real shithead. He's the Cavalier, which is a class from some of the older editions. He has a magical shield, and basically all he does is take damage and complain and run away.
Yeah, I remember from the few episodes I watched, he kept going, why do we have to do this? Let's just go home. It doesn't matter if we save anybody. I just want to get out of here. And the official description for Eric the Cavalier, he's age 15, the spoiled child, originating from a rich home. And on the surface, Eric is a big-mouth comic relief coward, but he's heroic at his core. Would you say that is the accurate description, Steven?
So Eric brings up one of my second complaints is that, and this is something that some cartoon series fall prey to is that they don't ever bother establishing their core cast. Like, a lot of, or especially as far as Disney cartoons of this time period are concerned, they'll have basically an introductory, like a pilot arc, where you get to really meet the characters, understand the dynamic between the characters, and like, so like, you know who you're watching before like the real meat of the story happens. But in this show, there is no pilot episode. At the beginning of every single episode, there's a little 2-minute basically summary of where everything started out. So I have no idea why any of these people associate with Eric. He seems like the absolute worst friend who would abandon you in your broken down car in a thunderstorm because he thought he saw a seagull or whatever. It's so, we really don't have any context for what these characters' friendship is outside of the world of Dungeons and Dragons. And to my point, there is an episode where Eric is transformed because, shit, what does he eat? I think, no, he smells the wrong flower. You know, he smelled the wrong flower. It was a magic flower, and this flower transforms him into this hideous bog beast. Oh. And 2 of the other characters, his friends, tease him relentlessly about something that literally was not his fault, and now is nothing, and there's now nothing he can do about it.
Well, I mean, he kind of deserves it.
He deserves it. Okay.
And to kind of put everything together, like how the friend group is formed, the show implies that they were all friends in the real world, and then they get on the ride, and the only one who's not a part of the main group is Bobby the Barbarian, because he's the younger brother. To which one? I think Diana the acrobat, right?
No, he's the younger brother to the thief, Sheila.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, I don't have that part down.
Oh, okay. All right. So
I remembered he was the younger brother to somebody.
All right. Well, a quick rundown of the main characters. There's Eric, the Cavalier. He is a magical shield. There is, what's his name? The wizard Presto, who has a magical hat from which he casts all of his spells by simply pulling shit out of it. There's the thief, Sheila, who has a invisibility cape where she just turns invisible whenever she feels like it. Okay. There's Diana, who you were saying, the acrobat, who has a stick that can magically extend up to 6 feet long.
Magic.
She and so another complaint of mine, Sheila is the perfect illustration of why the acrobat class no longer exists, because it was a class that focused entirely on tumbling and pole vaulting, which in a world where you can teleport if you learn the right spell seems a little silly. So continuing on, there is what's his name? Hank, the ranger, who is the kind of de facto blonde-haired white male leader of the group.
The leader of the group.
The leader
come out
of
in
the
the
group.
80s, Stephen.
And then, yeah, like you said, there's Bobby, who is the younger brother of Sheila. So,
and Bobby loved Uni.
Bobby loves Uni. And there's many times where they're about to leave. They're about to go back home. The entire point of the show is them trying to escape this crazy world so they can go home. And Bobby's like, oh, but what about Uni?
Yes, I remember that. It was like episode 5, and they finally completed the task, and it's like, we're going home. We're going. Come on, Bobby. And Bobby goes, I can't leave yet. The unicorn, guys. And they're like, Bobby, this world's not real. We gotta go. And then they ended up staying. It's like, yes. If I had the chance to get out of like a dangerous place like that, forget the unicorn.
So complaint number, let's say 5. And in this complaint, there is no clear continuity episode to episode in this show. I will say there is I can think of one status quo change, and that is in episode 4, the one where Uni gets kidnapped and there's all these other unicorns. She learns how to teleport, an ability which she uses one other time in the entire show.
I'm glad that Uni learned that.
But otherwise, you could watch these episodes entirely a random order. None of the context or, I guess, nothing would change about the storylines of any of the episodes, which, I mean, to the studio's credit, was probably intentional. I mean, I think this aired on Saturday mornings, and I know me as a child, if it weren't for Toonami, I wouldn't know that cartoons even had storylines. Like it was watching.
Yeah, you wake up and you watch it.
Yeah, it was coming home and watching Dragon Ball Z every day after school was the closest thing I had ever gotten to, like a continuous story within a show. So the show was obviously designed just to be like, kid turns on TV. What the heck is going on?
Adventure, yeah.
I mean, which was the purpose for the basically the prologue at the beginning of every episode.
And I won't lie, it wasn't bad, but I would watch like 1 or 2 episodes and I would start the third one, and by the time the third episode started, I was not paying attention anymore. It's clearly meant for kids, and I was watching it to discuss in this podcast. I just could not do it. And a fun fact about this is Dungeons and Dragons, the cartoon series, is a co-production of Marvel Productions and TSR with Toei Animation. So all 3 of them collaborated to make this in the 80s, and it ran on CBS from 1983 to 1985 for a total of 3 seasons. And what I have here in my notes is that it had 27 episodes, but that last episode was funky. Yeah, Steven?
You mean the final episode, the last aired episode, or the unfinished finale?
Why don't you talk about both?
Right, the final episode, like any other episode, it's a bottle story where the kids encounter some sort of problem. This time, it doesn't involve them escaping back to the real world. About half of the episodes are, oh wow, we found a new way to escape the new world. Oh, that didn't work. Let's move on to the next episode, I guess. And so, I mean, I could read you the description of it. There's some lady, and there's a village that's being harassed by this like mist that's kidnapping children. And I mean, the kids band together and they kill the mist monster and save the kids who are being kidnapped. But I mean, it has nothing to do with the final, which I would have to watch it again. But the finale was. I mean, it was an ending. I guess that's more than some shows can ever hope for.
All right, well, tell me what happened, Steven.
All right, well, first I read the synopsis, which so first you can find on YouTube. They have it was a reading drama based on like a paneled cartoon, and then later I found it just the most crudely hodgepodge cobbled together animated version with all the voices and stuff, and you thought the audio quality was bad, and the finished production show, like the audio quality in this was on an entirely different lower level. So it ends with them, I guess, if you hadn't seen all the episodes, you in this episode discover that Venger, the force of evil, the antagonist throughout the entire show, was actually the Dungeon Master's son. And the whole point that the kids were there was, I concluded the whole point is the Dungeon Master drew these kids into this. He basically kidnapped these kids so that he could fix his wayward son, who had
parenting to the max, kidnap other kids and hope they fix my kid,
who had whoopsie doopsie pledged himself to the ultimate force of evil and destruction.
We've been there. I've done that a time or two.
I don't remember the episode, but there was an episode where the kids and Venger teamed up against like the ultimate evil. It was a weird episode. All right.
Yeah,
so,
the kids in vinegar tied up with the bad.
Yeah. So the kids, they do leave. In the first one that I watched, the kids, it was implied that the kids didn't want to leave because the Dungeon Masters were like, oh, well, you fixed the big bad evil. So now look, now there's this whole world you can explore. And the kids were like, oh, yeah, let's just stay here. But in the
what were they going back to? Taxes and sadness? Yeah, I'd stay in the magical world.
In the animated one, fan-made one that I watched, only Presto decided to stay because he wanted to study magic, and also he had like a ghost girlfriend that he wanted.
Okay, I got something to say. Out of all the characters that I related to the most, Presto is my man. Wearing that green hat, the green robe. Every time he was just like, "Hey, there's a problem. Magic," and he pulls out his hat and he goes, "Okay, it's dark in the cave," and he pulls out a full birthday cake out of his hat just to use the candles as light. Presto, my boy, you're a genius.
So Presto, I got beef with Presto, first of all.
No, you don't.
My first beef is that Presto never, in my opinion, casts a single spell. He's essentially an NPC that was given a magical item. Basically,
okay,
it was a mix between a bag of tricks and a rod of wonder.
Maybe it was episode 1 or 2, Steven. He's literally, they go up to the castle in the sky, and that's where they believe.
Out of his hat?
No, that's where they believe he met Merlin, and he goes over to try to cast the spell to send them all home, and it accidentally releases the dragon. That is a spell he did, and I know it was the first episode, but it still counts.
All right, well, Christopher, in Dungeons and Dragons, activating a magical item, I would say, does not count as casting a spell.
Okay, well, Steven,
he was reading from a magical tome.
I'm a Presto fan. We love Presto here.
Oh, okay, you stan Presto.
We stan Presto. I love Presto. I'm a cosplay Presto at the next convention I go to.
Right, well, before we get too sidetracked, I will say that there was one episode that I really did actually enjoy. It's episode 20, and it's where the kids, having been foiled by Venger once again, they found some portal in like a glacier, and Venger like collapsed everything around them or something. They get together and they decide, hey, what if we just killed Venger?
What?
Like, hey, aren't we all tired of this shit? Venger keeps stopping us. Let's just go murder him. And the dungeon master comes. He's like, oh, I don't know, kids. Maybe you don't want. And Hank is like, no, we're gonna murder this guy.
Yeah, no, that's kind of like the same logic of, oh no, this mass murderer keeps escaping and murdering people. But what do we do? Do we slap him on the wrist, or do we end his life so he doesn't keep killing people?
Yeah. So the story, they go to some graveyard or something, and they work with Tiamat, I think, a little bit to like subdue Venger. And they're like, Hank is standing there like he's got his bow drawn. He could just murk this guy so they can finally escape. And he's like, no, I forgot. I'm a good boy. I'm not gonna kill him. And if I mean, you could watch this show every Saturday morning. You could have missed the best episode very easily.
I feel like that's what have been with a retracted episodes. It's like, go and take that one out of there. That's too dark for the children. Too dark.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been surprised if like the network was like, oh, these kids are contemplating murder. That's they only carry deadly weapons at all times. That's no good.
Yeah, they can beat up monsters, but when it comes to killing the bad guy, I don't know about that.
All right, sorry to interrupt. Complaint number 6. So Diana, the acrobat, easily the least developed character in the series, and coincidentally, she is the only character of color. I don't know how on earth that happened.
America in the 80s.
Except for one episode where she meets the only other black-coded character in the show, and they are immediately shipped together. Although that kid is shit. He's like from another dimension or from like the stars or something. So No, he's gone. So end of that relationship. So Diana, easily the least interesting character because of that.
Diana deserved better.
She deserved a better class too. They should have realized that the acrobat was not a great pick. So those are my thoughts about, or I guess my grievances with the show. I
didn't finish it, so I'm going to give it a 7.26 out of 10.
So it's going to really sound like I hated the show, but I'm going to say I'm going to give it a 9. I'm going to say 9 out of 10.
If I watched it on TV when I was younger, which of course I was not alive in the 80s, but if this came out like early 2000s when I was that age, I would have loved it. I would have given it a 10 out of 10. I would have been tuning in every Saturday. But as an adult trying to go back and watch it, it is kind of a hard watch.
Now you say that, but then I would say I am hard pressed to remember offhand most of the episodes. I watched the entire series maybe a couple weeks ago, and all but 2 or 3 episodes are completely gone from my mind.
I remember like key elements that I wrote down to point out of how like ridiculous it was. But other than that, I remember the unicorn issue, and then Presto getting chased by the dragon, because it starts off the show of literal Dungeons and Dragons, and I thought that was hilarious. But other than that, no, I don't remember what shenanigans they got into in the few episodes I watched.
Mm-hmm. Now, to its credit, I would say that basically every single episode you could design a single adventure based on every single episode, and they would be fairly compact, and you could probably run them all in one game.
And I have one more additional fun fact about this TV show. Looking into it, doing the research for this episode, I was trying to find a way to watch this TV show. And my initial thought was, hey, let me just jump on Amazon and go buy the entire series. Steven, I told you this at work, but do you remember how much the whole series, one box set, cost on Amazon right now?
40?
No, it was $300 for the whole box set. For the whole box set, which if you're listening right now and you're like, hey, I actually want to go watch this TV show, you can watch the whole thing on YouTube for free. The quality is not that great, but if you have a spare $300 to buy the box set, go on Amazon, buy the whole box set, go for it, live your life, go crazy. But I was not about to do that, so I watched a couple episodes on YouTube. But it just blew my mind. Like, why is that $300? I found no explanation.
I would say, so you said they're on DVD?
Yeah. The DVD box set.
There was probably only one printing. And the demand wasn't high enough.
Nobody else wants it.
Only like a couple, maybe dozen or 100 survived after the first printing, and scarcity and demand.
Survived the purging of TSR. That part just blew my mind. But I would say the TV show, this cartoon from 1983, was the best media production of Dungeons and Dragons to date. Because after that, we had the original trilogy of 2000, 2005, 2012. And let's just say, Steven, these live action movies are rough. They are. I don't even know the right words to describe them, which this kind of leads us into talking about them. So the first movie, Dungeons and Dragons, that's the title, came out in 2000, and it had a 3.6 out of 10 on IMDb. So for that review, that is less than 4 out of 10 for this first movie. Do you know anything about this first movie, Steven?
All right. So having not looked at any synopsises or anything whatsoever, I remember that the plot was there was these 2 goofballs. One of them was a Wayne's brother. I think they were thieves, and they come upon some lady
who is trying to help the queen of a country try to stop her evil vizier wizardman from summoning a bunch of dragons. Is that what's going on?
Yeah, okay, so that's kind of the base plot. So these two thieves, they are rummaging around in the town, and they're like, you know what, we have to prove ourselves as thieves. And these two goofballs, as you said, that's a perfect description. They're hilarious. And I don't know if it was intentional by the writing to make them hilarious, or if the writing was that bad, they were hilarious. But these two thieves, they go, look, everyone's distracted by the festival. Let's go steal from the wizard's tower. So they sneak their way into the wizard's school, and they start stealing things, and they end up getting caught. But while they're getting caught stealing, the evil wizard just murdered the head wizard, and the apprentice mage was the one who was now tasked with saving the kingdom. And she goes, well, you guys are under arrest, but I have more pressing matters, so I'm going to just tie you up and you have to follow me. And then they end up getting chased by the evil wizard, and that's how they formed their party, Steven. Mm-hmm. They were stealing, got caught, and then they're like, bam. And so as they're running from the evil wizard, they're going through the streets. They're trying to hide. They take a wrong turn, and they find like this homeless dwarf living in this pile of dirt. And he stands up and he goes, what is going on here? And he tries to fight the evil wizard and gets his butt kicked. And then by default, now he's joined the party because he just didn't like he got his butt kicked. And he's just this old grumpy dwarf who I assume is probably a barbarian because he had a big old axe, who just joins the party because he got his butt kicked and has no other ties to what's going on. So the story, the movie follows their journey to get this mythical rod that will help the Empress fight off the bad wizard who's on the council. It's just kind of this total clustered plot. The production value is hot garbage, but I will say, Steven, this movie feels like the average D&D session. Like if you just grabbed your friends together and played a campaign, this movie felt like how that would go if you were playing with your friends. Like, do you get what I mean? It wasn't a great movie, but the way the events took place, it genuinely felt like you were playing a campaign with your friends. At least that's how I would have imagined it.
So by your description, any game of Dungeons and Dragons, it wasn't a great time, but it was a time with your friends.
No, that's not what I meant. I meant as far as the movie and the production, the writing quality, the costumes, all of that. Ooh, man, was it rough. But the story, and I don't know, like I mentioned, if it was just the bad writing or just the clever writing, the characters are hilarious if you're just willing to just sit back and watch it. But if you watch it hoping for a good movie, you're going to be disappointed. But I do recommend the first movie, which it's the lowest rated out of the 3 movies that we've gotten so far. But in my opinion, I've only watched that one and part of the second movie because it was so bad I turned it off. It was my favorite live action Dungeons and Dragons movie so far.
Mm-hmm. of the 1 1/10 you've seen, it was your favorite so far.
I'll give you a couple more little facts about this movie, right? So it came out in 2000. It was originally planned back in 1997, and that's during the period where Wizards of the Coast is buying TSR. And a lifelong D&D player basically was like, hey, I want to make a movie. So he started in negotiations with TSR, and it ran into complications, and it took a while to get off ground. And they originally were going to have around $100 million budget for this movie. But, you know, things don't always go as planned. And by the time they were done filming the entire movie, the total budget came out to about $21 million in cash. So less than a quarter of their initial budget. And I think that's why it was hot garbage in certain aspects. But one thing this movie did better than the other movies that followed, the way that they did magic, like it looked visually horrible, but it was at least creative. So when the bad guys would be like, I'm casting a spell, you would see green or blue lightning shoot from their fingers, right? And later on in the other movies, they just did not give any cares when it came to trying to use magic or visually representing the magic. They would just blur the screen and be like, okay, that's the magic. I would rather take horrible CGI lightning than just a blurry screen saying that that's magic. And that was one thing that this movie did differently than the other ones that I liked better. One other cool thing, the executive producer for this movie was also a producer on the Die Hard movies. Yeah, I thought that was a fun fact. But other than that, I have nothing else to talk about this first one. Other than if you get the chance to watch it and you're a D&D fan, I would recommend just sitting down with a bucket of popcorn and enjoying a bad movie.
So what about the second one, Chris? Why couldn't you?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So Dungeons and Dragons Wrath of the Dragon God. That's a cool title. At least I thought so. I looked to find this online. I wanted to just stream it, buy it on Amazon, whatever. I couldn't. It's not available in our country, and I couldn't find a copy online. I couldn't watch it on YouTube. I just couldn't find it. So I had to go on eBay. I looked, and I found somebody willing to sell me the disc for like $10. And it finally got here, and I was so excited. I was going to sit down and watch it. Man, Steven, I got 35, 40 minutes into the movie. I turned it off. I was like, I don't think I want to watch this. And to kind of give the explanation of the plot of this movie, it's set 100 years after the first movie, and the only returning character is the henchman to the bad guy from the first one. He's basically got cursed to live forever, and that's not mentioned in the first movie at all. And he just wanders around as like a zombie for 100 years, and then he finally decides to enact his revenge by summoning a dragon from the mountain to destroy the descendants of the people who killed him.
This guy could have done that the whole time.
Well, yeah, for just 100 years, he kind of wandered around as this corpse, and he's like, I will get my revenge eventually. And I guess it took him that long to get his power back up. And, to me, after watching the first movie, I was like, okay, that sounds like something I'd watch. The descendants of the funky little party in the first one. I'll watch it. This movie is such a slow burn, dude. It's the first 20 minutes. It feels like they're just trying to introduce what the problem would be. And I feel like the CGI and the production quality is worse in this movie than the first one, but it got a better review. It got a 4.7 out of 10, which is almost a full point more than the other movie. But in my opinion, it needs to be switched. It was hot garbage, Steven. I think I like that word today. Hot garbage.
You just creeping closer and closer to that F.
So Dungeons and Dragons Wrath of God came out in 2005, and it was a direct-to-DVD American fantasy adventure written by Brian Rudnick and Robert Kimmel, the second installation in the D&D film series. And it serves as a standalone sequel because the only returning character was the evil guy's henchman that had hardly anything to do with the plot. But he gets his own movie as the main bad guy 100 years later. It was just kind of funky. I might get back around to watching it, but I do not recommend this one at all.
Mm-hmm. All right, so what's the deal with the third movie then?
Now, the third movie, I could not get my hands on this movie at all. So this one's called Dungeons and Dragons, The Book of Vile Darkness. And that might sound familiar to you, Stephen, because apparently that's a book from third edition? Or 3.5?
That's my favorite 3.5 supplement. It was a book which, for a brand that is trying to distance themselves from occult practices, it was a book that basically detailed every evil player option you could possibly imagine. They had all sorts of evil feats, evil prestige classes. I think there was one where you could literally just give people cancer, like make them grow uncontrollable tumors.
The look at natural or the look at the nature of evil. So it's like an evil book. And I never heard of it because, I started 3.5. I didn't really play any of the early third edition just because I was too young. And the thing about this movie, it's the third installment of the series, has nothing to do with any of the other movies at all. It's like its own standalone thing with no connection to the first two movies. And it was a direct to DVD in the UK. So not even in our country it came out, and it just came out 2012, and I still can't get a copy of it. I've been looking for the last few weeks. So if you're listening to this and you have a copy of the Book of Vile Darkness, email me and I will take that off your hands because I'm interested in at least trying to watch it. No guarantees I won't turn it off after the first 20 minutes, but I will try. Steven, you got any other cool things about the Book of Vile Darkness? Because I honestly don't know much about that.
Within the game, it's a little bit of a little meta weirdness because the Book of Vile Darkness is also an item within the game of Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, okay. So the book became a book outside of the book that became the movie of the book within the book.
Exactly. It's like the novelization of the movie Push by Sapphire.
Okay. Yeah. Totally got that reference.
So those are the old movies. There's some new movie coming out.
Yes. Okay. So there's a reboot called Dungeons and Dragons Honor Amongst Thieves 2023, which means it comes out next year, so we haven't been able to watch it, so we can't talk about it right now except for the description of the movie. But one thing I've noticed, the title is Honor Among Thieves, and that was a heavy tone for the first movie because the two main characters were thieves one ended up getting murdered, sad moment, but the other one ended up becoming a knight, and his main thing was like there's always honor among thieves. That's his main goal is I might be a thief and I might be robbing you blind right now, but us thieves, we have honor. And I wonder if that's a callback to the first movie. I don't know if they would go that deep and kind of reference that, but as somebody who just watched it and then heard this title, to me that sounds like a clear reference to at least the first movie in some capacity.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but all I know is this movie looks like real shiny hot garbage.
Well, okay, here's the thing: the production quality, and it's 2022 right now. We've come a long way in making movies since 2000 and the early 2000s. You could make things, if you take the right time, make things look hyper realistic now, indistinguishable from real life. So that's kind of cool, and that's one thing I'm excited for. I've seen the trailer. There's mixed reviews online. There's some people who are complaining about where the story might go. Some people are happy about it. So I'm personally excited. I think my biggest complaint with the original three movies is the quality of how they were able to produce the movie. I feel like if the movies were made now, they would rank a whole lot higher, just with today's technology.
I'm guessing that might be true. They might have fancier sets and fancier effects, but I don't know if the movies would have actually been any better.
Okay, well, that's my opinion, Steven. Dungeons
and Dragons media, or at least the movies, I think fall into the category of video game movies. That is, movies that bank so hard on IP recognition that they don't bother to create something meaningful.
Okay, yeah, that is a total fair point. Which, speaking of video game movies, I found this other cool thing while doing the research for this episode. There was an animated film that's kind of like an interactive adventure. You interact with the scenes and it kind of determines where it goes next. It's called A Scourge of Worlds, a Dungeons and Dragons adventure. And it's an animated film / interactive adventure. And each scene, it allows the user a choice and a different ending and different paths. And it was released by Rhino Theatrical in in June of 2003. I never heard of that. I don't know if you have either, Stephen.
No, it sounds like. Have you ever seen that game, What's it called? Dragon's Quest?
Dragon Quest? I don't think so.
Never mind.
I don't get that. But I haven't even had time to really look more into it other than throwing it in as a note to mention in our episode today. So if anybody has actually heard of that, Scourge of Worlds, a Dungeons and Dragons adventure, it's an interactive animated thing. If you've actually heard of that, props to you, because this was micro mention in an article of an article of an article. Maybe that is speaking for the quality of it, that it's not really ever talked about. Other than that, I have no idea about it.
Yeah, it could possibly be so memorable that nobody remembers it at all.
Yeah, and this kind of brings us to the end of our big topic today, as far as the media surrounding Dungeons and Dragons. You had the cartoon that came out in 1983, the 3 original live action movies that, in my opinion, they had potential. They were just not actualized to that full extent. And then we've got the movie that comes out next year. And speaking of the movie next year, if you go to any kind of relating article or the wiki page for this movie, you can see a slight mention to an already established claim for a TV show. So there's trademark claims for a D&D TV show set in 2024. So that's another thing to keep your eyes out on. I don't know the legitimacy of it. There's not much information other than the trademark claims have been made for another TV show set in 2024. Yeah. So that was our big topic of today.
Sounds like we'll have another Wheel of Time on our hands.
Stephen, I don't know if in your advanced age you'll be able to watch the show in 2024, but we can wheel in a TV into your nursing home, right, Stephen?
I hope so.
He's an old man. I'm joking. Stephen is not that old. But yesterday was my birthday, not at the time of which you're going to be listening to this podcast. So I'm old now too, Stephen. We're both old, so we can grow old and watch this D&D media together. Does that excite you, my friend?
Nah, fuck that.
Okay, Stephen, that's a little harsh. So, leaving out of our big topic of today's episode, we're going to jump into the Reddit question. It's a question that I find on Reddit that I present to Stephen in attempts for him to answer with all of his Dungeons and Dragons experience. Stephen, are you ready for today's question?
I'm ready.
Now, this one kind of revolves around what we're doing right now.
Talking podcast, D&D podcast. What are some expectations that people pick up from D&D podcasts that aren't usually found in your average game? And I know we're a little bit different than most D&D podcasts because we talk more about the culture of D&D rather than us actively playing and you listening to a live play of the game session. So we don't count. We're different, right, Stephen? We're different. What elements from things like Critical Role or Dungeons and Daddies? I don't know if I said that title right. I think I did. What elements of those games do people listen to and then expect to find in a real game that don't actually happen? Well, Critical Role, I guess, is the prime example of a dungeon master who's willing to put what's a seemingly unlimited amount of effort into world building. I like world building, but I ain't got time for that. I'm not going to design a city that the player characters might just walk right past.
Yeah, it's not your full-time job, so you can't spend 40 hours a week just designing the stuff.
No. So I think from Critical Role, at least, and I mean, thank goodness their the podcast version of their live shows aren't edited, because I think it casts a little bit of a light on how much of the game is kind of people just wandering around, not really doing a whole lot. I think most live play, or real play or whatever the term is. Most D&D podcasts, they are edited to an extent. So I think it might be a little misleading just how quickly people come to decisions, how often people have to look at the rule books, how it, I don't know. I think it creates kind of a false expectation of forward narrative progression. Like there's plenty of times if you want your players to do whatever they want, they're going to do mostly nothing most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, speaking as a player, especially in one of your campaigns and other campaigns I've played in, if you're in a large group, there's going to be episodes or like sessions where you just don't do anything the entire time. I call those filler episodes, but it's just part of playing the game. And like you said, a lot of D&D podcasts, they get edited because they want people to continuously consume the content, and people don't want to listen to something unless it's, fast paced, keeping their attention. And a lot of that happens where you're just does this shopkeep have this, and then you gotta spend a minute looking to see if the shopkeep has that. So I think that's a real thing to point out there, Stephen. Is there any other expectations? I know you've said you listen to some other D&D podcasts or, live gameplays.
I think another expectation is that the people you play with will be funny or fun to be around. If you've joined up with a group of strangers, they will likely not be funny, and hopefully they're fun to be around, but that's not a guarantee either. Most successful podcasts are they are crewed by players who are either comedians or professional entertainers of some kind.
Yeah, so there's already a natural level of entertainment value that they're going out of their way to actively provide. And, I'm currently playing another campaign. There's 6 of us total, and 4 of them are totally new to D&D. And while they're at the beginning, most sessions were, okay, how do my spell turns work? And after playing,
that's what they cut out of most of the podcasts is people saying, "All right,
exactly.
Let's stop everything. I don't know how my character works. Can you explain to me again how my character works, Stephen?"
Yeah, so it kind of takes a level of D&D knowledge, entertainment value, comedians, actors to provide that level that most, D&D podcasts have. And that's not to say that you can't play in a campaign and it's not going to be funny. Because if you get in a table filled with some of your best friends where you guys just know each other, funny things are just going to happen. That's part of the game, hopefully. But that is an expectation that's not always there.
Yep.
But that was kind of the Reddit question for today. Thank you for your answer, Steven.
You're welcome, Christopher.
Steven, do you know what's next?
I'm gonna say Steven's boss battle.
Steven's boss battle. Oh yeah, I've been I'm gonna cut that out.
Chris, are you senseless with anticipation?
Steven, I'm so excited for the Steven's boss battle. Steven, do you even understand? Steven's boss battle. I'm so excited.
All right,
dude.
well, Chris, I'm going to dash all of your previously expressed and all right, cut that. Today, Chris, the boss battle is once again on theme with the episode.
Yeah.
Only imagine that this time the boss is something that we actually talked about earlier. Venger, the force of evil.
Vinegar?
Yes, Vinegar himself, who in the show was, he was a fairly imposing character. I never truly understood why he cared so much about kidnapping these kids and stealing their weapons, because he seemed to be doing pretty well on his own.
Yeah, he was pretty powerful.
Yeah. So Venger, he is an evil spellcaster. And he assembles to himself. He has a loyal army of orcs. Sometimes he uses lizard people. So as a boss battle, Venger, I think, works best if you sort of do a little storytelling trickeration where Venger, very often in the show, he will, or at least in the earlier episodes, he will shapeshift into some non-player, an NPC to kind of, maneuver the children to doing what he wants.
Oh yeah.
So if you will
he was Merlin.
yes. So imagine an antagonist who is openly antagonistic, who is incredibly imposing. He has very clear goals. But then on the side, he's a shape-shifting little trickster fuck. He is shape-shifting into this, in my mind, this mild-mannered little gray-haired man, and giving the children all this seemingly helpful but cryptic advice. And whenever they turn their backs for but a moment, he disappears, leaving them helpless again.
The bad guy's the DM.
So imagine you have assembled your players together and you have this story going, where they're receiving all of this seemingly helpful information from this very powerful NPC. He's giving them all these clues. He seems to know what's best and want the best for them, but in reality he's playing his tricks. He's just maneuvering them by another avenue, in but one of his many guises. Now, as far as building this boss battle, I was thinking that it would probably be best to build Venger as sort of like a sorcerer warlock hybrid. Maybe give him the spellcasting abilities of some kind of sorcerer. He kind of, in the show, he focuses mostly on shooting, laser blasts, and occasionally he'll do some like deceptive like illusions, or I think one time he just turned somebody into a fish or something. But also, one of my favorite class features in the 5th edition Warlock class is there's an invocation that allows you to cast Disguise Self at will. So that sort of explains away Venger's ability to just appear as whoever he feels like, and constantly be shifting and trickerating on his little children that he's trying to maneuver around. So this boss, he would be playing both a benevolent, helping entity in this story, but then he is also ultimately just maneuvering the players into doing what he wants.
Okay, so let me get this straight. Vinegar's the bad guy, but Vinegar's the good guy. Vinegar leads the people as the good guy against the bad guy, but he is the bad guy.
Well,
is that right?
Canon in the show, the Dungeon Master, I can't think of a single time that he sets the players on a path to defeat Venger, because he doesn't want them to, because he wants them to save Venger, because Venger is his son. So within the context of the show, if there weren't the 2 episodes where the Dungeon Master says, "Oh, this is my son," I think it would be very easy for the Dungeon Master to be playing both sides.
Yeah, definitely working it to get whatever he wants. It's the double manipulation.
Mm-hmm. And
Venger, how does the fight go down?
Well, Venger, he confronts the adventurers many times, and it seems like you could probably defeat them, but they're always, like shooting lightning arrows and clobbering time and pole vaulting.
The power of love.
Yeah. Conjuring doves out of their hats.
Yeah.
So, Venger, I think he would probably, in classic villain mode, he would soften them up with his hordes of orcs and lizard men. All of those encounters where, oh no, we got captured by the orc, let's escape. We gotta defeat the evil orc captain. Oh wait, no, he's not even the big bad guy. There's this lizard guy. And so then eventually the children, they work their way up into Venger's tower, where he reveals that, I was the Dungeon Master all along. I wanted you here so that I could sap away the strength of your magical weapons. but then, just something happens and the players are able to respond to his antagonistic motives. And then, just like an epic final battle, you would need to give Bender either a lot of minions to help him in the fight, or you would need to make him a legendary creature and give him like some sort of spellcasting legendary actions. The easiest way would be to just use the stats for the Lich in the 5th edition monster manual. The Liches can be pretty scary opponents.
That's cool and all, Steven, but I'm going to put you on the spot, okay?
Okay.
I'm going to be real. I need to know what Vinegar is going to sound like.
He's going to sound like Optimus Prime.
So let's hear it. Come on.
Hear it.
Do it right now. Use your DM skills, bro.
He's going to say, "Foolish children, you have finally fallen into my trap." And then, there's like a little magical transformation sequence. He says, "For I am the dungeon master, and I have been manipulating you this whole time." And then he like holds up his staff, and energy starts draining out of the children's weapons. And they're like, "Oh no, Bobby!"
And Uni busts through the ceiling, and just kicks him in the face and goes, and saves the day.
No, Uni got killed off screen in my headcanon.
In Steven's world, Uni never existed. No, Uni existed just for you to kill off that little unicorn.
If you're running the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon show as a campaign, that would be a really good motivator. You establish a strong relationship with this baby unicorn early on, and then, Venger killed her.
That was also the bad guy.
Venger kills her. That's the best way to motivate your players, is kill everyone they love.
Yeah, Steven is a DM for me in another campaign, and that's how he gets you motivated for the campaign. He goes, "Give me your backstory." This beloved friend of yours. Dead. Psych. You have no one. So be wary if you ever join Steven's campaign. You will lose everything you've ever cared about.
So that is my boss battle for the week, Chris.
Yes, Steven, that was an amazing boss battle. I did not expect you to tie that back around to the cartoon show because I did not use my critical thinking skills, but that's okay. Thank you, everybody, for listening to today's episode. It was a deep dive into TV show and movies of Dungeons and Dragons and the surrounding media. Thank you, everybody, again for listening. Thank you for joining us today, Steven.
No, thank you, Chris.
I thought you were just going to say no.
No, I deny your thanks.
Be here. And if you guys stick around, we've got the interview from the contest of characters that should have been. It's an amazing interview. And at the end of the series, we're going to pick our winner, and the winner will get the Around the Tavern Award. Thank you guys for joining us here in our cozy little cavern. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Welcome to Characters That Should Have Been, an interview contest where I interview people about characters they made, but they never got to play. Today's interview is somebody that I kind of just recently met through TikTok. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I had not work, but training for work, sort of. Orientation, more or less. Which
doing great is always a great thing. So if you want to introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Caleb, or Beginner Buddy DM on TikTok. And what else you want to know? I'm 24. I'm a game master. I'm also a player.
Yeah. So the whole purpose of this interview is we're going to be talking about Dungeons and Dragons character that you made. So speaking of Dungeons and Dragons, Caleb, how long have you been playing?
So I've been playing probably since 2016. My first kind of encounter with D&D was, I kind of knew about it in high school, but never really got the chance to play it. But my first kind of encounter with it was in basic training. Our drill sergeant handed us the note cards, and we kind of just made up a little character real quick. And we didn't have any dice. We could have flipped a quarter I think we did flip a quarter on some things, whether you hit or not, and or like a passive save, or any type of like give me a charisma check, anything like that. We might have flipped a quarter for, but I think any combat we did rock paper scissors against our drill sergeant.
Wow, that is definitely an interesting way to get into. I think that's the first time I've ever heard like an introductory story to D&D in that manner. That's kind of a crazy way to get into the game. But hey, if it works, it works. So as you already stated, you're a bit of a game master and a player. Do you have a preference? Do you prefer being a player or being the dungeon master? Which one do you have a preference towards?
It really doesn't matter. I love both, honestly. I love hopping into other people's games, even if it's like, hey, I'm only in the city for a night. I can make a quick character in 5 minutes and then hop into your game. Or if, one of my buddies that I'd been best friends with since we were younger, many years, almost 18 years. And he was like, hey, what you been up to? I'm playing a lot of D&D, to be honest. It's really my only hobby now. It's consumed my life.
I know that feeling.
And he said he was really interested in doing it. I was like, okay, I'll run you through a game. And that was not too long ago. That was maybe a year or so ago. And but I was starting to DM with a girl I was in relations with out in Washington, where I was stationed.
Oh, yeah. So you're down to go either way. You'll play or you'll run the game, just whatever will let you play Dungeons and Dragons, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not even playing it. I just love talking about it. Like one of my guys in my orientation class, he was like, well, something got brought up about something tomorrow. I was like, no, I'm trying to get home as quick as I can. I got D&D tomorrow. And he was like, I've heard about it. Haven't really had the chance. He's like, I don't really understand like what kind of warrants you to like say, well, I'm invincible, you can't touch me. I was like, okay, well, and I explained to him hit dice, and I explained to him AC and how all that works, and how, you roll to hit. And just like within the span of 5 minutes, I've narrowed down. I went from compulsive hobby hopping to solely Dungeons and Dragons, and
there's nothing wrong with that.
Like if my brain's not focused on work, if my brain's not focused on my fiance and my kids, my brain's on D&D. If like my brain's thinking about D&D while I'm working.
Hey, you sound like a man with priorities. So let's jump into the interview topic a little bit today. It's a character you've made, but you've never gotten to play, which is kind of something that happens to a lot of people who play Dungeons and Dragons. When the creative juices are flowing, you make so many characters and you don't always get to play them. What's the character you brought for us today? So
I hadn't exactly given him a name, but he's a Tiefling Ranger, go figure. And I just wanted to make this tiefling who was like, he kind of hated himself for being demon-esque, but like obviously he didn't hate himself. He just hate his origins, where he came from, like the level of hell, lair of hell that he came from. They kind of go through a demon school and like how to reap souls, how to torture souls, that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, no, these humans aren't that bad. Like, these other beings aren't that bad. Like, and so he just grew a very, very raw and, like, such a strong hatred towards, like, not just demons, but, like, anything, like, abyssal, anything in the underworlds, the underdark, like, any type of monstrosity, more or less.
Oh, okay. So basically he was raised in this environment. He's a demon from hell, and he was like, oh, wait, this is horrible. I hate this.
Yeah. And so his ultimate goal is to go back to like completely obliterate the demon school and to kill the like arch professor.
I mean, that is a pretty out there goal. I think that's going to have to take quite a bit of training to get to that level. So if you had to give like maybe a physical description of your character, How does he look?
Oh man, I'd probably have to say like not very tall, but not too short, but just very dainty, petite, very petite fellow. But he's just like has this never-ending fury that just like boosts his adrenaline so much that his size does not.
So kind of his overall energy carries outside of his physical size.
Yes, he's gray-skinned, black horns, but he has 4 horns. He has 2 in the front that kind of go like straight back, and then 2 kind of like where his temples would be, and then also kind of going back. Like they all kind of curl up into like a little spike at the end. He's got long white hair that he's like constantly changing it. Like he wants to present almost as non-demon, non-tiefling in retrospect.
So imagine a demon who's trying to not be a demon. Got it.
Yeah. So he always has colors in his hair. He's tying feathers into it. He's, finding all these sorts of trinkets and odds and ends that he's like putting through his hair and doing different styles. And so he's like going through every kind of phase imaginable, but like he consolidates it to his hair.
So he would almost be like going through a town and he would see just an ordinary individual and be like, oh, I'm going to copy that hairstyle today to try to fit in better.
Not to fit in better. He just did it because he thought it looked cool, and it wasn't his long, straight, just flat hair.
Okay, that's totally valid. Now, not to put you on the spot or anything, I know you said you didn't have a name for him, but if you were to name him right now, what would his name be?
Oh. Oh my gosh, I don't even know.
You don't even know? There's nothing that
I more so matched his outfit and his aesthetic to, I don't know if you've played Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion.
I have not, but
okay.
It's something I can look up. So
there's a character on there, his name's Hatchet. So that's kind of like his sense of style, like, neat, like mid calf, brown leather trench coat, and but does whatever he wants with his hair. But I just named him, like when I created him up and in D&D Beyond, I kind of just left his name as Hatchet, so that way I could I knew who he was.
You knew the reference. I think that is still a solid name to give him, is Hatchet.
I mean, in retrospect, I gave Hatchet a backstory. He hates himself as a demon, but he's got 2 hand crossbows. He's got the 2 hand axes that he specializes in with, I don't even remember. Oh, with his 2-weapon fighting, his hunter archetype, and so I'm just kind of specializing in minimal weapons, but being able to imply max damage.
Now, would you say he had any kind of, family, demon family, any kind of, arching backstory there? Was that even a thought yet?
No, as far as family, not really. But I've kind of been bouncing around the idea of he was in this demon academy, and the arch professor brought a live human onto the stage in the auditorium and was demonstrating hey, welcome to college, but was torturing this human. But he just thought it was absolutely awful. He was I can't watch this. I can't watch this. He fled the school and kind of just did everything he could to escape from hell, essentially, while being chased down by the faculty and the other kind of demon guards of the level realm that he was in, just dip, dodging, evading, but taking them out along the way, because at that point he was just I'm done with other demons.
Yeah, so that's definitely an interesting concept. Do you think he would have any kind of special little quirks or weaknesses maybe?
So also probably unintentionally flirtatious, but like to a point where like he's just swooning over everybody.
Oh yeah. So it's
Like-
not that he's actively trying; it just happens.
He just seems to kind of just like he just looks into other people's eyes that aren't like any eyes that aren't demon eyes, and he's just like he just melts. And, like the kind of what's a good way to describe it? The very Tom and Jerry, the Tom and Jerry-esque, like when or cartoon-esque when they smell like a pie in a windowsill,
And he
like,
just
their
kind of
feet-
floats in the
their
air.
feet just kind of like drag behind them, and they're just like melting into the smell. That's more so like what he's doing, but to like any being that's not.
I can totally picture that. With everything you described about your character, I can fully just see a little demon lad with his horns pointed back start to slowly lift off the ground with animated hearts just pop out around him.
Yeah,
So
he's not.
is there any other, interesting ideas you had, or could you tell me about the campaign you were hopefully going to use this character in?
I
If
don't.
there was a campaign for it, I don't know. You might have just thought of this character. Yeah,
I feel like I was on the verge of joining another campaign at that point in time. And so I made this character to play in. No, okay. I remember now. So, yes, we were getting my group now. Like, we were getting ready to start Curse of Strahd. And this was like my first character I made for Curse of Strahd. And I was like, okay, well, this is so fitting for like the dark and, grimoire, creepy-esque setting of Barovia. Like, I chose a different character, and she's fantastic, by the way. But he just got kind of put on the back burner because I don't want to. I don't know. I haven't thought of what he sounds like yet. I don't know how he speaks. I've built him, but like I haven't put myself in his mind yet.
So is that something you usually do when you're making a character? Like you have to know how they sound, how they would act. So do you go like full immersion roleplay when you do Dungeons and Dragons?
Yes, absolutely. Anytime I'm speaking as character, it's with an accent. That's how you. And I also like doing that as to give the dungeon master like, hey, accent is character voice when I'm talking to you like this. Obviously, I'm conveying something to you out of character. So that way I can just say it. I don't say, hey, out of character, by the way, and then explain what I'm trying to explain. Because if I make a side comment to one of the other players at the table, because I just say it in my voice.
Yeah, that's something I wish would happen a lot more in some of the games that I play, is the roleplay element. And I'm in a couple campaigns right now, and some of the people I play with are new to D&D, so it's almost like an embarrassing element to them, like they don't know, or they're not that comfortable with the game yet.
Yes. I think, honestly, I feel like I've opened up my table a lot, I'm not trying to toot my own horn.
No,
But-
go ahead and toot it. Toot your own horn here.
But I know, like, one of my characters, we were in another campaign, but, like, the DM and his partner are getting ready to move. So they've kind of, like, put D&D on the back burner just yet until after they move and get settled and what have you. We have our other two players in the campaign. One's only played... I think he played like maybe 2 sessions online, and then anything else he's done, it's just been him and his wife in their kitchen, like building off of like the essentials kit, and that's about all the experience he's gotten. We have another guy who had like 0 experience at all. He watched Stranger Things. He's like, I want to play this, and he posted on he posted on the Ohio D&D group that he was looking for a group. And I was like, hey, you're really close. I would love to get a game going. Our GM commented on it, tagged the other dude because they were talking in their own chat about trying to find people in our area. And it all just fell together. We all clicked, but like they were still so reserved because they were so new.
Yeah, and that's definitely an element you have to factor in. And we played with that one campaign for about 9 months before everyone like fully got comfortable with their characters.
Oh man, we have I believe so. Last Friday or this past Friday was technically session 2, or it was session 2, but like it was our third time getting together. Yeah. And I'm pushing role playing to get them into it, to get the DM more so into it. Because I mean, we did a one shot just to kind of like see how the group meshed together, like if the vibe was there. And then we were like, okay, let's hop into a campaign. And so I've been trying to push role play because I think it's fun.
Yeah, it is definitely a fun
kid. I love it.
Now, to put you on the spot one more time for this interview, if you had to decide a voice for your character right now, what would he sound like? How would he say, "Hello, my name is Hatchet"?
I don't know. It took me a minute to find my character for Strahd. It took me a minute to find her voice. And it takes me like a week and a half to find voices for like my mini bosses when I run my one shots at at the store I run them at. It takes me like a week and a half to find the voices.
Okay, maybe if you had to describe what the vocal tone and how his voice would sound, what kind of descriptive words would you use?
I would say when he's okay. Have you seen Seven Deadly Sins?
Yes.
Oh, his name. Okay, so when he's talking to like anything non-demon, it's basically Meliodas.
Okay, no. So from the very beginning, when you started describing this character, I instantly thought of Seven Deadly Sins and Meliodas. And is that where you drew inspiration from?
No,
it's just a coincidence, because that's kind of this sounded heavily anime inspired to me.
Yeah, that absolutely is a coincidence, because it just dawned on me, hey, that's Meliodas' entire backstory.
A little bit, but to me, your entire backstory sounds like something that would be like its own anime series, and I would watch it.
Listen, if my stick figures didn't have scoliosis, I would be like illustrating my own characters. I would be writing their own stories. I'd be doing it all, and I'm too broke to hire anyone to do it for me.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
And I would put it out there. I'd put it on a forum to be like, hey, check this out. Hopefully I can become
enjoy this story, which I think that's one of the best parts about being a dungeon master, is kind of having an opportunity to tell a story. And that falls into being a player too, because you can create all these wonderful characters and have all these engaging little details and fun elements that you can use to make a character. Is there any other little things you would like to share for this interview about your character before we start to wrap up?
About my character?
Yeah, just any little details, or maybe any last comments on your character?
No, I think that pretty much wraps him up.
Yeah, I think that is a neat way to wrap up your character. Well, Caleb, I would like to thank you for joining us on this interview today, and I can't wait to compile all of the contestants together and listen and pick our winner.
Oh, I'm excited to listen to it all. I'm excited to hear the other characters.
There have been some wonderful characters, and honestly, this has been such an exciting journey. But Caleb, also, we became friends off TikTok, and your TikTok is Beginner Buddy DM, where you share tips for Dungeons and Dragons. So anybody who's interested in some tips or any kind of guide information, Caleb has a wonderful TikTok, Beginner Buddy DM over on TikTok. So go check him out there. And I think that's going to wrap up our interview today. Thank you guys for listening to the podcast and our big topic of the week. And we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.